Welcome to The Change, a podcast about the changes in life that shake, break, and make us. I'm Laura, a 45-year-old writer, podcaster, and mum who has until recently always loved change.
And I'm Cathy, a 53-year-old writer, podcaster, and mum, and change is actually my kryptonite. We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia on which this podcast is recorded and recognise the continuing connections to lands, waters and communities.
We pay our respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures and elders past and present.
Hello, we're back.
We're back. Hello, Cathy. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, look. We've still got 2.5 weeks, well, around that time of school holidays left here in Australia. And, Cathy, I'm just dying a bit. I know.
Truly do not miss school holidays. I've got to tell you, there are two, count them, two amazing things about having adult children. No school fees and no school holidays. Yay.
Yay. Well, we've got no school fees thanks to the public system here.
Well, you still get your voluntary contributions.
Oh, okay. All right, true. But the holidays kill me. I'm just feeling a little bit overwhelmed. And I think the difference when they're younger, well, I'm realising, is Leo still goes to sort of like vacation care, camps with friends, and it's organised. I pay for it. I drop him off. It's essentially like going to school, really. Whereas Toby, the teenager, bless him, he's, organising all these different hangs with his mates. And then he's like, can you take me to golf today? And then, 20-minute drive there, pick up a mate, grab the anyway.
I love
every day a different day.
I love these kids. They have these amazing social lives.
Oh, amazing.
People who can't get themselves around.
No.
Right? Like they can't get from A to B without help from mum or dad or grandparents or whoever. But they arrange these incredibly wild and full social lives for people who can't get around. I mean, I don't know. When I was a kid, if I couldn't get myself from A to B on my push bike or on the train.
Yeah, on the train. Yeah.
Because I lived where trains were the thing.
Yes. Same, actually.
Then I didn't get there. Like it was like they were the options. I either got myself there or it didn't happen. And
this is so true. And we've talked about this actually. This generation, whether it's our fault as parents or, well, kind of is basically, can't blame the kids. But we do things to encourage them to be healthy and get out of the house and get off their screens. So I will encourage them to go and set up these elaborate hangouts at the tennis court or golf, etc. And then you're like, but now I have to get in the car and I don't want to overly moan about it because it's first world problem. But I just feel really overwhelmed at the moment. I keep losing my keys, having these moments of insanity and thinking, is it dementia? Is it perimenopause?
No, it's not dementia. It's just probably perimenopause and it's probably overwhelm.
Yes, I think that's it. And fortunately, I did actually have a well-timed appointment with my lovely psychologist, and she reassured me that I'm relatively normal. I mean, nobody's normal, are they? But just
what's normal?
Feeling the pinch.
Sliding scale, right?
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. So that's where I'm at. How are you doing, anyway, Cathy? I just had a little moment there.
Look, I'm doing okay. I certainly am a little overwhelmed just in terms of the looming mental health crisis that is potentially coming for New South Wales.
Oh, tell me more.
There's a mass resignation of the psychiatrists.
Yes.
Out of the public health system. And I have a pretty complex mental health history, and I do see a psychiatrist through the public health system because my mental health intersects with neurology. So I've been fortunate to benefit from the incredible public health mental health system in New South Wales. So that's a little kind of overwhelming, but I have good support around me and in other ways. And at this point, I really don't know what the outcome will be. For me, I won't know until kind of closer to my next appointment, which is in a couple of months. So I'm hoping everything's going to be fine. But
and that your psychiatrist is going to be around, or have they?
I don't know.
Don't know. I guess they probably don't have to tell you at this stage.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
It feels kind of invasive to ask, even though it's a little concerning for me. But at the same time, look, and I don't think that I'm the only person that deals with New South Wales mental health services.
No. I'm sure it's heavily used, and yes.
Yeah. And I will say from the outset that, like I support everybody's right to negotiate better conditions for themselves. So if this is what the doctors have to do, then I fully support that. It's just feel
hard,
a little bit,
in a practical sense, knowing what's on the horizon for you.
So but, aside from that, life is life. It's swimming along, and
you got a new hair color. Just pointing that out.
Oh, yeah,
listeners can't see. It's cute.
It's a little bit blonde and a bit coppery, and so it's nice. Apart from that, it's all good.
Good.
What have you got for us?
Okay, so I'm going to start us off with an article that I read on news.com, which kind of it's leapt out at me because I do love a word or a trend. When you see something and you're like, oh, that's an interesting concept, tell me more. And this one was titled, let me find the actual title, Below the Replacement Rate, Alarming Trend Sweeping the Globe. And it says, humanity appears to be sliding into a terrifying doom loop. I was like, what? Doom loop? What's this doom loop we're talking about? As explains in the title, it is actually to do with falling birth rates. So the writer, Jessie Seidel, starts by talking about the fact that, we've got this kind of cataclysmic coming together of major events. So we've finished the pandemic in official terms, but we're still kind of on the back of those coattails. We've got unaffordable housing, soaring costs of living, inaccessible education, I guess just general costs, coercive employers, exorbitant childcare costs, a lack of hope for the future. All contribute, this is pretty bad, right? This is the doom loop he's talking about. All contribute to a global malaise expressing itself in falling birth rates. Okay. So women are having less children, or families are having less children than ever before in countries across the world, which I think is really interesting and speaks to multiple issues, not just this doom loop, right? So he goes on to give some stats about where the birth rates are falling. So in Mexico City, for example, the trend is less than one baby per woman per lifetime. So that is, less than one per family or per mum. Thailand is about a 1-to-1 ratio, and the Australian Bureau of Statistics here in Oz recorded a fertility rate of 1.5 for 2023, which is much lower than this sort of what was it? One for the mother, one for the father, one for the country, which was the thing back in the 70s or 80s. Yeah.
No, it was. So that was a Howard and Costello thing. Okay. I want to say, what is it? Abbott and Costello, the comedians, except they were not comedians. They were our PM and treasurer at the time.
Yeah. Okay.
There was a declining birth rate in Australia. This is not the first time that we've seen declining birth rates. I'm just going to say. Baby boomers are by definition out of declining birth rates too, I guess, really, after the war, and there was a boom. And I would say that there was probably a slight bump in birth rate after COVID lockdown.
Yeah, or during the lockdowns was the time when people were like, I guess 2020, I guess.
Kind of like stuck at home with not a lot else to do.
Yeah.
And you really couldn't kind of hang out with other people, so hung out with each other,
your partner, and you made babies. I mean,
I think there was probably a slight bump, but what we're seeing now, bump kind of in inverted commas,
like it,
I think what we're seeing now is kind of an overcorrection, and that would probably, some of that would come from a cost of living crisis and all sorts of different things. But when I was pregnant with our twins in 2004. Well, they were born in 2005. That was definitely the line that was being touted, and that was that brought in the baby bonus, and that was really around the one for the mum, one for the dad, and one for the country to really promote birth rates and increase population growth, because the older people, being boomers and Gen Xers, are there's a larger cohort at the top end than there is at the bottom end, and it's like, well, who's going to look after us if we don't kind of replace ourselves
and pay for us, in terms of taxation and all those things, right?
All of those things. So I don't think this is the first time that we've seen declining birth rates. I suspect that it's bigger now.
I think it is.
Suspect people are concerned about bigger issues, being able to afford to live, being able to afford to educate your children the way that you would like to educate your children, being able to afford the climate. And by afford the climate, I mean, do the things that we need to do to make the changes so that we actually have a planet to live on.
Well, I mean, and also
it
climate.
Feels very doomful. Right?
It does, and this doom.
I'm not sure that's a word. Doomful.
Doom. Yes, doomy.
Pending doom.
Gloomy.
I don't know.
Gloomy. I mean, people are worried about the climate, right? So that would play into it. I know that's something I thought about. Like, what do I want to bring children into the world when it's kind of burning down? And that was, Toby's going to be 15 this year, so I think that's something that people have thought even more about in more recent times as we watch weather patterns change dramatically, and the LA wildfires being the most recent example of climate catastrophe. It makes total sense. And I guess bring it back to the article, he kind of says in a quote that you need a little bit over 2 per mum, I guess, or per family for long-term population stability. So, once you start going below that, you've got it's around the wrong way, like you say. You're going to have a massive, heavy top, and lots of elderly people, and apparently even India and China, which traditionally had huge populations growing out of control, they're now below the replacement rate, meaning that they're in the same kind of situation as Australia, the UK, US. And Jamie speculates this is essentially an opinion piece about who's to blame.
Oh, please.
Yeah, who is to blame for this?
Tell me.
One of the things I didn't really understand this. Well, he's saying, is plastic injecting synthetic estrogen into our water and food?
I'm going to guess. I'm going to say it's the giraffes.
The what?
The giraffes. I don't know. The zebras.
Is it the zebra's fault?
I don't know. Is it?
No. Apparently, he also, after questioning whether it's synthetic estrogen, no, it's educated. Is it educated women? And I mean,
here we go.
Yeah. I guess when you educate women, they also begin to have aspirations for a better life for themselves. They don't want to be stuck at home with 7 babies and no future. They want to have maybe 7 a family, babies. But. I don't know where I pulled 7 from, but I never wanted 7. Let me just say that 2 was always enough to me. But I do feel like he's putting, and he goes on to say he's not saying it's women's fault, but I guess it's just kind of this.
Is he? Is he not? Well, is he?
I would say that he has not maybe picked at the exact reason why this is happening, and I just think it's men's fault. Actually, men are the ones starting the wars. They're often the ones causing a lot of the climate issues, or certainly have been over time. And if we're not looking after our women and moving towards gender parity in wages and all areas of life, then of course women don't want to be at home with children. They know that the men have had it better by going out to work and having superannuation and having all the things, and women, once they're able to read and understand that this is not in our favor to be at home being essentially looking after the kids and just doing everything else with no money, of course it makes sense, but it's not our fault. I guess that's how I took it a little bit personally, perhaps, and felt that he kind of needed to maybe look at the other gender instead, and say, why don't women want more children? I don't know about the estrogen in the water. I'm not a scientist. I'm not sure about that. Yeah, cost of living, absolutely. But why are we in this situation in the first place? I don't think it's the women's fault. Myself.
No.
Thoughts? Discuss.
Gosh, I have a lot of thoughts. And clearly I was just being stupid when I said the giraffes and the zebras, because I had a feeling that it was going to somehow land on the shoulders of the women.
It's always a women's fault, isn't it?
Because it's always the women, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like this is always the way. It seems to be in recent years, it's always the women's fault. Like the Me Too movement, well, that's the women's fault because they didn't cover up and they didn't say no and they didn't do this and they should have spoken up and they shouldn't have just done that. And, when it's always, even bloody Zuckerberg, he had the audacity to blame Sheryl Sandberg for the DEI, so that is diversity, equity, and inclusion at Meta, because it was under her watch that was implemented. So he's like, oh, that's why we need to bring back the big masculine energy, because Cheryl had the audacity to actually think that maybe we needed to overcorrect a little bit in the other direction. And I feel like that's what happens, right? And I feel like, everyone's like, oh, but what about the boys? They have no role models to look up to. So they're all turning to Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson. And it's like, yeah, but there's actually plenty of really, really bloody good men out there, right? And if you don't have any good men in your life, I really encourage you to go out and find some, because there's plenty of bloody good men out there doing ordinary things every single day. I am incredibly lucky to have good men in my life. And I know that is not the case for everybody, but you don't have to look too far to find the good men. And it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what's happening. It's the women's fault, because we have the audacity to be educated and speak up. And like you said, I don't know. When you're educated, of course you want to use your degree, of course, or your high school education, or maybe you went and you got a trade and you want to use your trade. Of course you want to do those things. And I want those things for my daughters. I want those things for my daughter-in-law. I want those things for my grandchildren that do not exist. And I have two great nieces. I want them to grow up in a world where they are equal to everybody and they have far more choices than going to school and having babies.
Yeah, I think that there are plenty of good men, as you say. There are plenty of good women out there doing amazing things, and it is categorically not our fault that we're not having more babies than we used to. The men really, it's them. They need to step up, because in the future, I would think that it's going to be as much a decision of my sons, say, for example, as to how many kids they have, because they will be actively involved. So they'll be thinking about their career and going, well, if I want my wife to have 3 children, right, in the old Costello fashion, then how are we as a team going to manage that in our house?
Yep.
Because she wants to work, I want to work, we want to afford nice holidays. Let's have a chat about that. You need to talk about how many children you're going to have as a team, if you're going to have them at all. Obviously, it's a completely legitimate choice not to have any children. And that is, lots of people don't want them. And I think that's fine. I think putting the blame on the women in that situation is shit and short-sighted. And also, it just comes back to the fact that this, this particular article is not looking at it from a global perspective, and it was clearly written by a man. So when it comes to the doom loop, yes, I think we are in a bit of a doom loop in terms of clearly the stats show that birth rates are declining, and that is something that governments as well as, individuals are going to have to look at ways, like with the old baby bonus of old. I don't know how successful that was. I'm sure it did attract some people to have babies. I don't think it was a very much a Band-Aid solution, wasn't it? Giving people $3,000. It's not going to set your child up for life. It's going to give you a couple
I mean, we certainly got a bump when the children were born, and for us, we were able to use that money to, buy a double pram, to buy a second cot, to buy a third car seat, because we had twins. So
it's helpful. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't pay for their education, does it?
The money for us when they were born certainly went into all of those practical things. We didn't have a dryer before we had twins. We needed a new dishwasher when they were born. So things that were also going to make my life a little bit easier while I was at home with babies were the things that we spent that money on. But it didn't extend my maternity leave.
No.
It didn't give my husband the option to be able to stay at home with the children.
The longer term.
Longer term things. I know a lot of men of my generation who have children around similar ages to us who are quite jealous that their wives were able to spend formative years with their children. It's a time that they weren't able to have with them because it wasn't really an option for them.
No,
they would have loved to have done it.
Yeah.
But because there were so limited choices for women to go back into the workforce, men couldn't really step out because they had to pay the bills. Like at the end of the day.
Yeah, someone's got to do it.
And the numbers, the money has to always match up, and it is just that simple. And yes, the cost of living crisis is here with us now, but I think every generation has their cost of living crisis. So, and I'm not going to dismiss what's happening now, but I can tell you there were many times when I stood in line at the supermarket adding everything up to the last cent and knowing that if I went 30 cents over, I wasn't going to be able to buy those groceries, and standing there going, well, which thing do I take off? Like, I need the baby formula, I need the nappies, but maybe I don't need tasty cheese, or maybe I don't need, I don't know, Milo or whatever it was, There were no luxuries. And I'm not going to say that it's harder or easier. It's just different. And but I do think that the men are part of the solution.
They are, yes, 100%.
Increasing birth rate, and also the doom loop. If the men don't want to listen, if they just want to dig their heels in the ground and be cavemen about everything, then nothing changes. And if nothing changes, then they do get left behind, and it is a bit of a doom loop for them. On a similar kind of, I guess, vein, it was a little bit more humorous, but it's still very close, really.
Okay. Yeah.
I found an article, and I will declare that I saw it on Cheek Media, and I saw another incredible woman that I follow, Yasmin London, sharing it as well. So I was like, oh, there's a couple of, this is, up there. And Yasmin said, go read this, you will love it. And she wasn't wrong. It was an article on The Guardian, and it was written by Rebecca Shaw, and it is entitled, I Knew One Day I'd Have to Watch Powerful Men Burn the World Down. I just didn't expect them to be such losers. And, I mean, the headline itself, like, if we just go with that.
I love it.
She's so right.
Yeah.
She opens with Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg's desperation to be cool as they suck up to Donald Trump is so cringe it makes my skin crawl. And I think we spoke about this last week, but seriously, the picture that she has in this article, like, honestly, Zuckerberg with God only knows what. I mean, I think they are the AI glasses. I honestly don't know but what is with that freaking curly hair thing that he has going on at the moment?
Look, Yeah,
I just don't know. No, I don't understand.
The necklace as well got me. The necklace and the
just everything about him at the moment, right?
Yeah.
But it just goes. She is so on point in this article.
She's funny, yeah.
But she says, I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, but everything seems to be going down the tubes quite fast, and not fun tubes like water parks. The ending in shit kind of tubes. The issues are complicated, the reasons are diverse, but there are a few culprits who have been making themselves extremely visible.
Well, we know who those culprits are, but
and
just
we
to clarify,
sure do know who those culprits are. And
Elon Musk, I'm assuming, being one, and Zuckerberg another.
Yeah, basically, look, both of them. And Joe Rogan and,
all tech bros, right? The tech bros. I don't know if she means Jeff Bezos as well.
Yeah, I think, look, all of them.
Yeah.
Really.
And they're posturing for Donald Trump's affections, really, aren't they? They're kind of
I think
peacocking around.
Zuckerberg, let's be honest, Trump did threaten put the guy in jail. So he's clearly done a bit of a backflip to stay out of jail. Do we really think that Trump would have put Zuckerberg in jail? I don't know. I don't think so. But
he's too rich and powerful.
Yeah. And I mean, I keep sort of having a little chuckle to myself every time I see that, Meta are rolling back fact checking. And I know we talked about this last week, but it kind of implies that there was fact checking. Yeah. And I'm still not sold on that.
No.
But again, the fact checking and the DEI that they had were implemented by a woman. Maybe we don't need more men. Maybe we need more women. But anyway, just saying, can't be what you can't see.
No, totally. And his quote about the masculine energy, I know that's not what she's talking about necessarily, but it does play into this, like, he just wants to be one of the bros, and it just kind of, I get it. Like, he is cringe. And what even does masculine energy mean? Just being a dick? I don't know.
It's certainly not the energy that I would like my son to grow up.
No, I feel like it sounds revolting.
And it's certainly not the energy that I would like around my daughters. Whether they're just friends with blokes like that or not. I mean, I kind of feel like my daughters would not be friends with blokes like that. They're a bit, I don't know. It's just.
Yeah.
It is such a cringy time, and I don't know what the answer is. I really don't know where we find our solutions. I don't know if the solutions are the more we want black and white, the more we're going to find the answers in the grey. But we have to be listening for the grey. We have to really be open to it. And I'm just not sure that we are.
No, and I think, oh God, I agree. I love this article. I read it when you sent the link, and it's so funny. And Rebecca Shaw is a fantastic writer, and the way she talks about, both Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg being, these people in power, and how she had been prepared to kind of deal with evil and greed and cruelty, like we see it in, I don't know, with these amazing villains like in Game of Thrones or something. But then she kind of tags on, but she didn't anticipate that these people in real life power would also be such huge losers.
Yeah.
And I just think it's so true. Like you say, it's so true. It's so bad. And the cringe factor is off the Richter. But obviously, she makes light of something that is quite serious. And but I think we need humor. And we got through Trump's last presidency with some great memes, some great humor. And I feel like really the only way to get through the next 4 years is with the same. And I was seeing on Instagram one of the brilliant women I follow called Mary Catherine Starr. She's Mum Life Comics, and she did this great piece this week. She's a illustrator and a comic, and she had some ideas about how men 5 ways that female employees can bring more masculine energy into corporate culture. Aka Zuckerberg's request.
Hit me with it.
So, number 1, spend at least 1 to 2 hours of each workday pooping in the company bathroom. Number 2, respond to long, detailed emails filled with questions like this, and the email answer just says, okay. 3, in meetings, talk over people, interrupt, or restate something a man just said, but say it louder. Responding on the fact that men often talk over women with their mansplaining. She says, number 4, comment on male colleagues' bodies. And this woman in the drawing is saying to her male colleague, still trying to lose those extra 10 pounds, John? Then you might want to skip the donuts in the break room today. 5, expect the men in the office to organise all staff parties, extracurricular events and joint gifts. So obviously women, we're always getting those party things done. And then she's got heaps of other ideas, just really to
which is
switch it around.
Very, very true. There was my favourite line in Rebecca Shaw's piece is, unfortunately, while you might be able to buy power, it is impossible to buy a good personality.
Yep, so true.
Tell me, what was happening 20 years ago? Because we covered 40, which I am still saying the 80s, the best. So 40 years ago, we were doing amazing things. The world was not quite so scary. We had lots of fun music, lots of fun movies. 30 years ago, we had Wonderwall, we had Oasis, we had... What else do we have?
Oh, we had Alanis Morissette. We had
Gangsters of Paradise.
Oh, yeah. We had,
it wasn't terrible. Like
Die Hard with a Vengeance.
It didn't
The 90s were cool. I love the 90s. Yeah.
It wasn't terrible. But hit me with 2005 because I was pregnant. This time 20 years ago. I was
my goodness.
pregnant.
So your girls turned 20.
Fat and hot and uncomfortable with twins.
Yeah, twins. That's a hard pregnancy. I found normal, single baby pregnancy to be very challenging. So I can only imagine with twins. But yeah, so okay. Quick summary, 2005, 20 whole years ago, can't quite believe it. So there were some pretty awful big events. When I looked on the news, I was like, what happened in 2005? I had to remind myself what exactly I was doing when I was 25 years old. I was working at TAFE as an events coordinator, and I remember getting a phone call or a text message from my mum about the London bombings that happened on July the 7th, which was pretty awful. And I remember a beautiful girl at work came and gave me a big old hug and said, I hope you're okay. It was very sweet, but very sad event. There was also Hurricane Katrina that year, which was a big,
that was a long time ago.
Devastating event. I know. I couldn't believe it when I saw that. But something that really also blew me away that this was 20 years ago, because it feels like it's been around forever. And I can't believe it was only 20 years ago in some ways, the launch of YouTube.
What?
Yeah. No. Only 20 years old. So, I mean, that is a long time. And obviously there are people that are alive and I work with that, were born after YouTube.
My children. Well, no, not all of them.
Not quite. But actually not quite. But yeah, it's a really... it's amazing considering how many people use YouTube on a daily basis, how omnipresent it is in our culture now. To YouTube something, it's a verb, it's everything. We don't know what to do without it. So interesting that's relatively new. What were you up to in 2005, Cathy?
Well, apart from being pregnant, I was this time, 20 years ago, I was actually on early maternity leave because I was really sick. I had to use up all my maternity leave before the girls were born, which is kind of sucky. What else was I doing? Running around after a 3-year-old as well.
Yeah, you were busy being a young pregnant mum.
Yeah. So it was a tricky time. And the big events, I guess you block those out. Like I don't really remember any of those big events. But then I had newborns.
You were so busy. It's not the time, is it, to remember
that
them?
was sort of all happening. What about some of the music?
Yeah, so there was some great music. I was just having a little look back. So number 1 on the Billboard charts for the whole year, so 2005, was Mariah Carey, We Belong Together, which is interesting because she was also in the top for 1995. So I feel like that was real peak Mariah Carey era, wasn't it? She lasted... a little like Madonna did 85 to 95. Mariah did us 95 to 2005.
There you go.
And then Gwen Stefani in at number 2 with Holla Back Girl. Great tune. Mario with Let Me Love You. Again, this is American, so I think we're getting a bit of a sense of what was big. Yes, globally, but mostly obviously in the US. Kelly Clarkson was big with Since You've Been Gone.
Do love a Since You've Been Gone moment. Yes. Which also must mean that American Idol has been around that long.
Yeah, definitely. She would have been one of the earliest, right?
That's where she was from, isn't it?
Yep. Yes, it was.
She made a big one. Wow. Okay.
I know. And Don't Ya by the Pussycat Dolls. I love that song. It's a little bit rude and a bit Don't Ya. Wish your girlfriend was hot like me.
We are really sorry, people, that we sing. I don't know why.
Oh, God, sorry about that.
Each week, Laura and I seem to think that we're going to get better with our singing.
Break one out. It's awful.
It's actually not going to happen. Boulevard of Broken Dreams by
that's a
Green
great song. By Green Day. Yeah, even Toby likes that one, my son. So it's got staying power. Some of those tunes have not aged so well. Some are still classics to this day.
What about movies?
Movies.
Is there anything that I would have watched?
More Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire.
I'm not a Harry Potter fan, but my family loves it.
Yeah, look, I do vaguely remember going to the cinema to see that one. Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith.
Here we go.
Star Wars. I also enjoyed seeing. That was the best one of those three. Did you like that one?
Yeah. Well, which one is that? Oh, that's the one where Anakin.
Yeah.
Yes. Spoiler alert. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's okay. Darth Vader kind of.
Look, it's 20 years, but I still think it's too soon. But yes. Yeah. That is Revenge of the Sith. Or the 5th of May is often referred to as Revenge of the 5th, as in May the 4th.
Be with you. Yeah, right. Okay. Well, that's the Star Wars nerd coming out on you
there was a Narnia movie, wasn't there?
Yeah, that's the first one. I like that film, actually. I still sometimes have watched that with the kids and quite enjoyed it. It's a classics,
and
classic
the King Kong remake.
Oh, is that with Naomi Watts? Yeah.
I'm not sure which one it was, but,
I've reached it. Yeah.
Not
really my cup of tea.
It's not my thing.
No.
But yeah.
Well, it was obviously a big time for action films. I guess those films all have big special effects. It must have been a very burgeoning kind of moment in time where special effects were having a bit of a moment.
Yeah. And so that was,
there you go, 2005. Gosh, can you believe it? Well, Cathy, I think that is us for this week.
I do.
Yeah, just send us a message. Follow us on Instagram. I don't know. Just reach out.
Yeah. And look, again, we would really love guest suggestions. I mean,
please.
We have our hit list. But hit us with some if you have some.
Brilliant women. All right. Catch you next week. Bye.
Thanks for listening to The Change, a fully independent podcast. Whether you're seeking inspiration, curious about change, or just here for the great banter, we'd love you to make The Change your new go-to podcast.
And even better, send us your voice notes or questions about change. We'll use them on the show. Email us at changepod2023@gmail.com or DM us on Instagram at _change_pod. Find us wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram for more on The Change.